Hello and welcome back. This is Sherry with Heart and Soul. I'm back in the studio today with a fun new video. This one's going to actually cover a few different topics, so it might be one you want to save. So if you're just joining me for the very first time, welcome. I hope if you enjoy this video, you'll please give me a thumbs up and click on subscribe, then leave me a comment saying hello and any questions that you might have. So today's video is kind of a spin-off of what I have been working on, which are these vintage book journals. I like to use tea-stained paper, vintage paper, digitals of vintage things, and that kind of thing in my journals. And I had a couple things on my desk that I wanted to incorporate. So that's what today's video is about. I have done some experiments with two new papers that I hadn't used in the past, and actually a third one that I'm going to throw in here today that was something that I have purchased a long time ago and forgot I had. So I'll kind of throw that in there too. It ended up also with me finally creating this Vintage Italian Ephemera Set number 1. I'm going to have 3 kits eventually, but this one is ready to go in my Etsy shop. And so I will have a link down below for you. And what I'm going to do is go over kind of the papers that I played around with first. Then we'll go through this kit. And then I'm going to take you over to my computer and actually walk you through what it's like to purchase this kit, because it's a little different than some of my other ones. I've recently received a lot of comments on an old video that I did that's been getting some play recently, where it's about purchasing digitals for beginners. So if you're brand new to all of this, that video is also going to be very helpful for you. So I'm going to put a link for it down below as well. And then I'll also put the playlist that I've been working on mostly recently, so that if you want to kind of see what I'm doing with the old book journal thing, that you can take a look at that too. So I'm going to set this aside for just a minute and then we'll go over that. But I want to start with a couple of new papers that I had never played around with. One of them is mulberry paper. And this mulberry paper, I know it's not going to come up very well in this, I don't think, this has a real kind of linen texture to it. And it has a real feel of like old documents, like it has a lot of cotton content in it. And so it's really soft. It doesn't wrinkle when you even try to distress it too bad anyway, which is nice. So I decided I wanted to tea stain some of this to use to print the old documents. And we'll look at those in a minute. So you don't have to tea stain it, I decided. You can. If you are printing both sides, because they're old documents and they may have some water damage and that kind of thing, or just the age damage on them, you'll have that printing anyway. So you don't necessarily have to age this paper first. That is if you're printing both sides. If you want to print one side and it has that aged look and then the other side's clean, you might like it that way. I tend to like it to look grungy, so I like to either coffee stain or tea stain my paper beforehand and then run it through the printer. So you can do it either way, but I like when you have these, extra watermarks and things on it. So there's lots of different ways to tea stain paper, coffee stain, any of that, and there's lots of videos out there. I have other videos out there. In fact, I'll maybe put a link to my playlist for coffee staining and tea staining, just in case you want to do some other techniques. But for this one, I just wanted to keep it really simple. So I just got a glass dish. So you just take, several tea bags and just let it steep and just get it, as dark as you want for your tea staining. And then for this one, and like I said, I've done it different ways. I just dipped these both sides into that bath, took it right out and laid it on the ground. I have like an indoor-outdoor room that I can just lay it right on the ground and let it dry. If it's not too windy outside, you can put them outside on your patio. You can dry them in the oven. There's lots of videos out there how to do that. You would just do the same thing. If you stack them on top of each other and they're not, just individual like this, you'll get a line wherever they crossed over each other. So I didn't want to do that for this project. So I just, like I said, just let them air dry outside. So once I've dried them, then I iron them. I had this question recently asking how I get my papers flat enough to run through my printer. For one thing, I always use my rear printer feeder. That way I don't have to worry about them trying to feed up and around. When you put them in the bottom thing, they kind of have to go like this. I use an Epson Echo Tank printer. and I just run them through, and then they come right out like this. So that way, if you get a jam, it's much easier to find. I did not have a single jam with this paper. So I just iron it, and then while they're hot, like I'll iron them one on top of the other. And I was going to do it on camera, but I actually had ironed them all already. So I just, lay them one on top of the other. And then while they're still warm, I'll go put them under a big heavy book. And then that way they're cool and are being pressed while they're cooling off. And that way they stay nice and flat. So the other thing you could do is, say you don't want to take the time to stain all this paper and have paper all over the place. You can just do one or two pieces that you really like the pattern of, with the watermarks and all that, and then scan that. Maybe I'll even do a kit one of these days, or just a freebie or something, of some water stained old paper. And then when you print, it's going to print that onto your other side. So you could print one side with pattern and then one side that just has paper with the watermark on it. And then you don't have to tea stain a whole bunch of paper. Okay, so that's another option. Okay, so that's mulberry paper. The other paper that I purchased was tea bag paper. I had never worked with this before, and so when I purchased it, I didn't do a lot of looking around. I just kind of picked the first one I saw, and it was 13 inches by 118 inches, so it came like a big thing of tissue paper. So I had to actually trim it. So what I did, because tissue paper is too thin to put through your printer, normally you would attach a piece of tissue paper to a blank piece of just printer paper in order to print it, right? So say this is I'm just going to use this as an example. Here's a piece, since I've used it all up already. Normally, you would take that tea stained paper or tissue paper, and you would cut it close to the size of your printer paper, and you would put a piece of Scotch tape across the top, maybe also on the bottom. I tend to be lazy about it and just do it across the top. Because I'm using my rear feeder, I don't even do the sides. As long as I have that top really well, I'll just run it through like that. You can do the sides if you're worried about it and all, but it takes longer, and then you're gonna end up losing that edge anyway. That's normally how you would do tissue paper, and that would also work for tea bag paper. Well, what happened in my case is I had decided to tea stain it first. So normally I have a piece here. This is already attached to something. It's this white. And so I tea stained it and then wanted to print on it. So what happened was, after I tea stained it, I needed to iron it. And I happened to have it flipped over this way. There's a smooth side, and then there's a side that's a little bit rough. I happened to go like this to see if it's gonna work. I guess I should get my board out here so I don't melt my top. This is just a quilter's cut and press. This is what I use for all my grungy stuff so that I don't ruin my ironing board. But I kind of started ironing it, and I noticed it was sticking to my iron. So I thought, oh, it has a right side and a wrong side. So then I flipped it over, and I don't know if it has enough that it'll stick now, but I flipped it over, and then I was trying to iron it out. And I noticed it was sticking to the paper. I thought, oh my gosh, that's so perfect, because now I can just iron this to the paper, unlike tissue paper, and run it through my printer. I don't have to put tape on the edge. So in this case, because my tea bag paper was large, I just roughly had it the size, ironed it to the copy paper, and then just trim around and run it through your printer. That's the easiest thing. Now, sometimes it sticks better than others. So when it wasn't sticking very well, I tried something, and I don't know that it's going to work. It worked on some, but these, I think these are too stuck to the paper now. So I tried using freezer paper. If you've never used freezer paper, it's what a lot of people like to use for printing on fabric. That's a whole other subject, and I do have videos about that. I will put a link to that video because I finally figured out, I think, the best way to do it. So I will link that below also. But I bought this big thing of freezer paper, and you just tear off, about the width that you need. And then there's a dull side and a shiny side. So you want to take and put your tea bag paper with that rough side to the shiny side. So that's going to be the two stick sides stick together. Okay, and then you would run it through your printer. Now I have obviously not printed these yet, so we're going to see what happens. But I noticed when I went to trim, you know, I used my guillotine trimmer to trim it the size I wanted before I print it. And I noticed it might be too stuck and not, you know, if it wants to tear. So this might have been overkill. It worked on the first one that I did. So I don't know if I just heated it up too much. This one is one that's prepared just on tea bag paper to plain copy paper. And it stuck, you know, it stuck well. So I think this is the better way to go. But if you're finding it's not sticking for whatever reason, you might try a piece on this. I'm gonna still try to print this, I think. And I'm thinking maybe if I heat it up a little bit before I try to take it apart, it'll soften up whatever adhesive is in there and let it come apart easier. So this is just me experimenting. I wanted to share that. See, this is coming apart better. So I wanted to share that because, you know, I'm going to try it both ways. But I did like that, you know, I thought that was pretty cool that you can just attach it to paper and then print that out. So I've printed out, like I said, a few of them on this tissue paper. So I really like that because, you know, this is going to be great for, you know, collage paper, rice paper, collage paper. It has that washi tape look too, you know, but even to use this, because, you know, I mean, I don't have a lot of washi tapes. This will be great to kind of use in that way to, you know, for decoration, but even just to reinforce those spine seams, you know, for my folios. So I really like how that came out. And I've done, you know, a couple of different ones, and this is just a smaller piece. But see, that'll be really nice collage paper. So I really like the tea bag paper. Now I also found that I'm going to order some more in, I think 16-ish, 16.5 by 16.5, something like that size. So that way I can cut them to more of a normal size and run them through the printer. Now, when you tea stain, don't throw away your tea bags when you're finished. Let them dry out and then take them apart, you know, open them up, get the tea out. And I keep this little drawer where I've ironed them out. And then I use those to reinforce my folio spines. And what I mean by that is sometimes you're using old pages, real old book pages that you need to reinforce. And so I just glue them down. This is a different kind of tape, but I go through as I'm doing my folios, and anything that seems like it's going to be too fragile, I'll go ahead and, you know, put a piece of something. So this is actually a scrap left over of the tea bag paper that I printed on. So it's kind of has that washi tape look. So those are some tips for using mulberry and tea bag paper. So the other kind of paper that I used in my last video, I had made all these strips from the scraps from trimming off my folios. And I thought I was going to store them in one of my sewing machine drawers, but I didn't have an empty one. So I was looking around for something long enough, and I found this music roll, player piano music roll. And I had a box of that. So I thought, I'm going to take the paper out and use the box. So I thought I need to do something with this paper. And in my Italian documents, I had, you know, the thicker stuff that the mulberry paper worked well for. I had the tea bag idea, and I thought I need some like receipt weight paper, some thinner stuff. And I didn't have anything, but this is perfect. And you know how sometimes receipts have like little, you know, they've been stuck in a machine that makes a stamp on them or something. I thought this was perfect for it. Now, all music roll paper is not the same. I had this other roll, a smaller roll, which the paper's the same in how thin it is, but it's all these little dots instead of the little lines. So depending on how close they are, you know, that's pretty fragile and opening up. I might want to put a piece of tape or something over it before I ran it through my, you know, add some tea bag paper on there or something first to reinforce it, add a layer and then print on it. I don't know, but this one's more fragile. So this one though, I really liked. You know, it also has some little fragile spots, but I ended up cutting there are 11 this way. So I ended up just cutting a whole bunch of 8.5 by 11 pieces. Some of them I have to be careful because I'm not sure if they'll get stuck, you know, if they're open here. But so far, I'll show you the ones I've printed, and they did fine. But I'm thinking, I don't know how much I'll get out of that roll, but if you think I should put some of this in a kit and sell in my Etsy shop, if you want me to share with you, I may be able to add them to some packs. Or maybe next time I do a paper pack. I actually, a while back, now that I think about it, a while back, I had kits in my Etsy shop that were some of the different random papers I use. The mulberry paper, you know, at that time it wasn't mulberry and tea bags, I didn't have that, but some of the other different papers that I had, I did some little kits so that if you had never used a certain kind of paper and wanted to try them out without buying a whole thing of it, it had variety of different things in it. Let me know if you would like something like that again, because that would be a good place to maybe put some of these different papers. So I would be willing to maybe do that. It might take me a little while, but let me know if you'd like something like that. So piano roll paper, and then I decided for these, I printed piano, or you know, vintage music on it. And the color of this I wanted to show, and I probably need to do another experiment because now I don't remember which one was which. I didn't mark them. But on one of these, the only difference in the settings is I think I used a thin paper setting on one and a regular paper setting on the other one. And I don't remember which was which, so I'll have to figure that out. But I kind of like this one because it's more faded. And that's really, it's the same digital. So that's something that maybe we practice, experiment with, I guess. Okay, so that's piano roll paper. If you have any other ideas about what to print, but I thought these would be great for my receipts, and I'll show you how that looks. Okay, so here's my kit, and this is what you'll see when you go click on, look at it in Etsy. Now I'm gonna have 3 eventually, I think. This is set number 1. They're all gonna be the same 15, each gonna have 15, but different documents in it. So I had over 40 documents. So I tried to do a nice mix of variation of color and what you'll get. So each of the 3 kits will have like 5 or 6 different script, different handwriting. And I'll show these to you printed out, but they're gonna be a variety of that. Some maybe like this is like a blank document. There's some ledger that's filled out, some book pages, and then a couple of collage of receipts. So that's why I wanted something thinner, and that piano paper worked great to print out these receipts. So this is what you'll see. You'll get 15, like I said. Now, when I did these, normally I will size things to A4 or 8.5 by 11. And this is why I'm going to show you this on my computer. I didn't really need to do that, and I didn't want to alter these too much, so that way you have more flexibility. So I actually scanned them in their original size, and that's the size that you're going to get. So they may be odd sizes when you see the actual, when you pull up the actual document in, you know, in the file that you'll get. Don't let that throw you. I'm going to show you on the computer how to print them out how you like. Okay, some different ideas about printing them. So they're all different sizes, but I've printed them all out on A4 just so you can see them. In most cases, there might be an 8.5 by 11 in here somewhere. Okay, so you'll see this first. Then normally when you do the download, and I'm going to do this on my computer so you can watch it just as if you're purchasing it. Normally when you do an Etsy digital download, once you purchase it, there'll be a thing to download, and you're downloading your actual actually a file with all these different pages in it. Because this file was so large, I couldn't do it that way. It wouldn't have allowed me to do. Some of these files were so large that one document would have taken up a fifth of what I could put on Etsy. Some of them were too large to even put in one file. So I have a way around that, and that's why I want to walk you through it, because it's a little bit different. I have done a couple of other of my kits. The bubble kits are done that way. But I thought especially if you're new, you might want to walk through, and I can just kind of show you how this works. So what happens is, instead of downloading all these documents, you're going to download just a PDF that's this sheet of paper. So this is what it's going to look like. You don't have to print out the sheet of paper, but when you download and click on it, and I'll show this to you, this is what you're going to see. And where it says click here, you click on the actual word here, and it will take you to my Google Drive where all the files are there, and then you can just put those on your computer and you'll have them forever. So that was the way to get this many documents, this large a file, and sell it on Etsy. It was the only way that I could do this one. Okay, so I'm going to show you that, but I want to flip you through these just so you can kind of see what they look like printed on my mulberry paper. And so they just have that old document feel. Now, when I printed these, I did not print them borderless. So you would have a little border. In fact, some of these were like torn on the bottom, or just from old handmade paper. They just have that handmade edge still. So some of them are that way, some of them aren't, but I wanted to print them with a border so you can kind of see that edge. Okay, and then there's this one, and again, these are maybe a little darker than they would print out for you because I printed them out on tea stained paper. These are the actual 15 that are in this first kit. And like you could see, this one actually had kind of a burnt edge. But you can even see that they're riding through from the reverse side of that paper scanned through. And then the ledger, this is the blank one. And some of these would be maybe better printed on, plain tea stained paper. I had this in my printer. Now, these book pages are really nice done on this mulberry paper, because a lot of the old paper in these Italian books actually had that kind of feel. So I did, when I did book pages, I did 2 side by side because that's what I had. And then they fit nicely. And that way for your journal, you can just do that and have trim it. And then you would have it for your folio. So there's 1, 2, oh, here's one that I printed on tissue paper, or on that tea bag paper. So this is just on to copy paper, and it just comes off that easily. But that'll be really nice for collage paper, I think. And then this was like a handwritten letter that had been folded. And this was an old dictionary page. And then another kind of blank form, another ledger. And then these are the 2 that are kind of the little receipts that I printed on the piano paper. So I really like that because, a lot of times you'd see a receipt would have some holes in it or some stamping on it or that kind of thing. Okay, so that's the first kit. And now I'm going to go over to the computer so I can walk you through what it would actually be like to purchase this one. Okay, so here I am in my Etsy listing, and when you make a purchase, this is actually from my file that I see, but when you make a purchase, you're going to see like a little download symbol. Mine, it's a cloud with a down arrow. And so if I click on this, and so once you've made your purchase, you should see that somewhere in your order. And if you don't, I should stop real quick, because occasionally some people can't find that little cloud or a place to download, and they'll see where they've made the purchase and all of that, but there won't be the button that they need to click on. In my experience, you need to turn off your computer and reboot. I don't know why it does that, but my son tried to explain it to me as if you're someone that doesn't turn your computer off every day and get out of all your programs, or you have things running in the background or whatever reason, your computer has too many things going on and it gets a little scattered. So usually rebooting, it fixes the problem. And in this case, I don't know a situation where that has not fixed the problem. I think maybe one recently, and I don't know what happened. Sometimes it's usually at the person's end. It's not at my end, because I might have 20 people have purchased something and not had a problem, and then one person won't be able to, the button won't show up. And so I wanted to show you today that clicking on that button, it downloaded that item for me. So it's not a glitch. Maybe Etsy's having an issue at the moment, but usually if you reboot your computer, you'll be able to find the button to download. Okay, so here is where I go, a little circle with a down arrow, and that shows my downloads. Now I'm working on a MacBook Pro, so if you have a different type of computer, then it might be different for you. So here's my document. I can just grab that and just drop it to my desktop. In my case, it's going to tell me I have to, because I already checked this earlier. I always like to check again just to make sure all the downloads, everything is working properly. So I have my PDF here, and that's what you will be downloading. Once you click on that, I'm double clicking on my PDF, and this is what you're going to see. So it's just a description to make sure you're the right thing you purchased is up there, and just a little thank you note for me. And then if you it's going to just reaffirm this is what you've purchased. Now where it says here, if I hover over that, you see it actually, there's a link there. So there's actually a link button tied to this word. So just double click on that, and it's going to, actually I've been single clicked on that, and it asked me, do I want to open that in Safari? Okay, so here are the 15 pages right here. So I can go over now and download each one of those. And I don't know if there's a way maybe to mark them all. Let's see. If I click on the first one, and I'm going to scroll down holding my shift key, and it highlighted all of them. And then I would download, and now it's going to scan those for viruses, and it's going to download them to my computer. So again, all of those, you see each document coming in. Okay. So in my case, I'm going to just click out of that because it may take a while. And I already have them on my computer. So, but that's what you can do. Just, click on the first one, shift and highlight them all, and then download. Okay. So I'm going to get out of this. So I have mine in a file called Italian Docs. So let's see. I like to look at my screen in this kind of form. So this is my first set. I have the other two I'm working on. I'll open that. So there are my 15 documents. Now I like to, you see I already have one that's cropped there because I was playing around, and there's another copy. These are my 15 originals. So I like to keep them here, and then if I do any changes, I might create a separate file. You could do this one of two ways. You can go up to File and then New Folder. And it's going to put a new untitled folder here, and then I can just give it a name. So I'm going to call this Demo. Okay, now the other thing that I could have done is I could have just, say I've already made some copies of my documents. I can just go like this, grab those two, File, a new folder with 2 items. It'll put those 2 items in a new folder. So these are Demo 2, we'll call it, just for the sake of doing this. Okay, so here are my originals, and I have some file folders that I can put some demos in. So let's just go to the first document here, and we're going to just double click on that. And so that's my first one. And let's say now I want to print this. It's in a size, let's see over here, it's showing you the dimensions, but it's showing them to you in pixels. So if I want to really see what size that document is, and you don't need to do this, I'm just kind of showing you that it's a weird size. It's 7.91 inches wide by 10.97. So it's not even an 8.5 by 11. Okay, so if I want to change this or crop this or change the color or do anything to it, I don't want to work on my original because then I've altered it. I want to save this and I want to duplicate it instead of working on that. So now I have one that's called Copy. I can give it any name I want. So I had one already that was one cropped. Let's call this one altered, just for the sake of a name. Okay, so that's how you would change the name. Now, if I want to do something to this, I could print it just like it is without doing anything. Or I could say I want to crop it and just have the text and not have all this white space. So where I have that little plus mark, if I just push my mouse down, and I have like a little pad on my computer that's my mouse, I just drag it, and I can do it to any kind of shape I want. If I want to go to here, that's kind of a 8.5 by 11 or a A4 size. And then I would go up to tools and then scroll down here to crop. Also Command K would do the same thing. So now I have this new document. I have my original, I have a new document that shows it cropped. The other thing that I can do is I could go back up to tools and I can adjust the color, and it'll bring up this little screen, and I can, move any of these little levers and change the color of my document, or even the sharpness. So this one here I kind of like. Sometimes it gives it a sepia. Sometimes you need the exposure to be higher, or maybe you don't want it to, you want it to look a little, almost like a stamp, a pour stamp. You can go all the way up to exposure, and it's just kind of a background kind of look. So you can do anything you want or reset it all. If I've made changes in the color, once I get out of there, it saves it automatic. So that's why it's nice to work and play from a copy. Okay, so I can click out of here now. And you can fool around with all those little sliders and get all kinds of wild colors and different things. So now if I want to print this, I would go up here to File, down to Print. And I'm going to show you a couple of things about, in case you don't, do a lot of printing and changing sizes and things from your print screen. It's just kind of an easy way, an easy place to do this without having to create a bunch of different documents and resizing each of them. So here I have my paper size. Let's look at that first. US letter. If you click here, you have a whole variety of paper sizes. Down below here, these are all my custom sizes that I've created. And that's because I have a lot of envelope sizes. If you've seen some of my other videos where I like to print digitals onto envelope, I create my own sizes for that. If you go down here to manage custom sizes, that's where you would create, you'd do a plus here, and it would create a new one, untitled. I'd give it a name here, and then my dimensions. So I'm going to get out of that. So that's just on paper sizes. That's one way to change the size of your document. If you look at this one right now, I have it on US letter. So this white space is a US letter size, and my actual document is much smaller. I could change this to A4, and I'm going to use those two for this video just because that's what most people are printing from. Even though I'm in the United States and my normal printer paper is 8.5 by 11. When I order papers like the Mulberry paper I showed, that just comes in A4. So you can order A4 size paper online and have it even if you are in the United States. So I've made this one A4, and I've got my paper size, but it doesn't fit. So if I go here to scale to fit, I can click on fill entire paper, and now it's filled the entire page. The other thing that I can do here is when I've clicked on A4, it gave me the option of borderless. Now, not every printer might do that, but mine does. And so I can print borderless. And so I would click on that one if I wanted borderless, and you see it removed my border. So that's another thing you can do. That's also available on my computer anyway, under the letter, US letter borderless. You see a rear paper feed slot. I don't really click on that one. If you do, you'll see what happens. It gives you this gap at the bottom. So if I really want it truly borderless, I just do this one, and I don't, even when I using the rear paper feeder and I want just US letter, I don't click on that because I don't need that. I don't want that big gap at the bottom. So I have US borderless here. Now, if I wanted to go in my printer, the other thing that I need to do is go to printer options, go to print settings, and here's where it would tell me what my paper source is. Now, you can click on rear paper feeder if you have paper in your other trays, and then it will feed from there. Whenever I use specialty papers, or any kind of odd thing, I use my rear paper feeder. I find it much easier. I don't need to really change this paper type. The only time I really change that is if I have a thin paper, and that's where I can't remember which one of those music sheets was done on thin paper. I have a feeling it was the darker one. I think for thin paper, maybe it puts more ink on, or it could be the opposite. So I would have to do that test again. But those are usually the two that I do, plain paper or thin paper, unless I'm using one of my Epson presentation papers. Okay, so rear paper feeder, plain paper, and then I do go to print quality, and I do find. On my printer, I have found that if I use the poor quality, I get stripes in my paper. My inks all seem to be fine, and it's not, it's like I think I need to clean my print head. But then and I might find little gaps here or there, but it uses so much ink to do that. I found that if I just use a fine setting, that I get better prints. So anyway, that's what I usually set, and then I would click on OK. Now the one thing I can do here under presets, and I think this is really handy, is it's default settings. If I go here to presets, you see I've got a couple already, 8 that I've created, A4 borderless fine and US letter fine, and that's also borderless, but those are just the names that I gave it. If you clicked on edit preset or save current settings as preset, and then I can give it a name. So this one I already have, so I'm not going to save it right now, but I would give it a name here and then click on OK. And now I've created a custom preset. I like to use this because going through all those steps that I just did, making sure everything's good, it takes time. And if I'm going to be doing a whole bunch of digitals and printing on the same kind of paper, it's just easier to do it this way. So assuming that I just went into this document, let's just get out as if I'm doing it for the first time. I'm going to go here to File, Print. You see it's how we started, but if I go here to Default Settings and I go to Preset and I want to do, let's say, A4 borderless fine, I double clicked and it changed it to A4 borderless, but now I need to scale to fit, fill entire paper. So I'm not going to print this one. I'm going to go to another one just to show you. So here's my original, same thing. If I go up to File, Print, go to my presets. Let's do this one, A4 borderless fine, double click. It's here, I can see, it's here, it's correct. I want to fill the entire paper, and then I could print. So you see it filled my entire page. Okay, and let's just do another one just to see, since we've played with this one twice, just so you trust me here. So let's go to number 11 just for the heck of it. Same thing. Now if I wanted to crop this border out, I could, but again, I would want to File, Duplicate, and play with my copy. And I could give it another name. I'm not going to do that right now because I'm not going to really change anything. But then if I went to File, Print, now this one is on showing that it's on a US letter size. Let's see if the borderless will work here. Presets, US alter. So US letter fine. This one here, let's see, let me cancel that. Okay, so if I click on this, File, Print, it's defaulting. My default setting is US letter. If I go here again to my presets, and let's do US letter fine, double clicked, it took away my border and all of that because now it remembered that my preset was borderless. And then again, I'd click on fill entire paper, and that way I get rid of any little bit of border. If I wanted to change this right here and say I wanted to print it both ways while I'm in the same document, I could just here double click on A4, it switched it for me, it switched it here, and it's already filling the entire paper, and I can print it that way too. This is just, to me, a faster way to print all the different sizes. If I wanted to print this on an envelope, for example, I can go back to print, and even though it's back to default, but if I go here to my paper size, I can just pick any one of these envelopes, and then if I want to say fill entire paper, I can do that. And because it's print, text and things, it's not like it's a figure. If this was a person, it would make them look tall and thin, or a little wider and shorter, depending on what I was trying to fit it on. But for text things, if you didn't know what the original looked like, it's never going to matter. But this would really be nice to print on an envelope, and then you can use that in your journal and it's already a pocket. So it's just a super easy way to kind of maximize using your digitals by making copies, doing little things to them like changing the size and color, and then printing them that way. And again, anything that I've made a copy of, I would just drag it here into these files, and that way I don't confuse them and end up messing up my originals. So that's just how I like to do it. So if you have any questions about that, please leave them in the comments. Okay, I think that's it. So if you have any questions, if I skipped over something, please ask in the comments. But I think this is a fun kit. I'm going to enjoy kind of printing some of this stuff out and using it in the journals that I'm working on. So I hope that you take a look at it, and maybe it's something that's useful for you too. So have a great rest of your day. Now go make something. Bye.